Hello and welcome back to Just Meg Elise, a podcast about healing, remembering who you are, and diving into deeper alignment. I'm Meg, and each week I'm going to be sharing the soul work, the self-reflections, and the healing modalities that have helped me in the hopes that they help you too. So during today's episode, I wanted to talk about spiritual bypassing, what it is, what it means, that sort of thing. And I want to talk about something that we don't talk about often enough, is that healing is not always pretty, and what healing actually looks like. Last week's episode is a good example of that. I was and still am going through something really tough. Last week though, I was in the pit. I was in the pit of it. And I was literally crying my way through that episode. I knew I wanted to still put out an episode, but I just thought, Megan, just show up how you show up. It is what it is. And because I'm resilient, I was able to transmute that, journal about it this week, and I feel so much better. So that is a good example of what spiritual bypassing does not look like. So first I'll explain what spiritual bypassing means, and then hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. So spiritual bypassing means that you are bypassing the hard emotions in favor of only the positive emotions. So a lot of us dive into manifestation and law of attraction, and of course I believe in all of those things. But a lot of those teachings are saying stuff like you have to remain in a positive state at all time to manifest what you want, and that's just not true. And quite frankly, when something happens in our life that is upsetting to us, understandably because we're human beings with a wide range of emotions, but when something upsets us, sometimes we can pretend like it's not upsetting us in favor of staying positive. And all that's doing is trapping emotions within the body. Read the book, The Body Keeps a Score. And it's also delaying your own healing. And it's delaying you actually being positive again. And I'll explain what I mean. When you're going through something tough or going through a hard moment and you're pretending like everything's okay in order to still be in a positive state, you're not actually in a positive state, you're just pretending. So really, it's still happening deep down, but you're not allowing yourself to acknowledge it. So really, are you doing yourself any favors? Because it's just a smokescreen. It's saying, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Let me give you an example. I always think of it like this. It's like if your house is on fire, and I mean that literally and figuratively, almost like a metaphor, but let's say your house is on fire and you're standing in front of your home and you're saying, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy all the time. Everything happens for a reason. This is fine. You're obviously not fine. Anybody would be upset by that. Rightfully so. In this example, if it was literal and your house is literally burning in front of you, you're losing belongings, you're losing photos, you're losing cards and memories and a lifetime of things that you've built. And it's okay to be upset over losing those things. Pretending like it's not okay, that's the issue. So it's allowing yourself to grieve what's happening in your life without pretending like everything's fine just to be in a positive state quicker. You know what I mean? Obviously, the goal of all of us is to be in a positive state as much as we can, but that does not involve bypassing hard emotions to pretend like we're in a positive state. There's a difference. There's a difference between actually being happy, actually practicing gratitude to be in a happier state and doing those things and trying to live a more positive life and seeing the good and the things that you do have. There's a difference between that, actually being positive, and pretending like you're positive because you don't want to look at the hard emotions. So some examples of spiritual bypassing might be dismissing your anger or your grief as low vibe. That's low vibe. I can't experience that. It's not low vibe. You know what's low vibe? Pretending like you're okay. And there's also sometimes this cultural pressure to be positive. Or maybe not a cultural pressure, that's not the right word, but kind of. In a mini culture of the spiritual community, that culture, yes, there is a pressure to be positive and in a positive state at all times, and that's just not possible. And especially in the world we live in, like, we are going through extremely chaotic times, and there is stuff happening in the world that makes me want to cry on a regular basis. And I do. I allow myself to feel those things. I allow myself to cry. I allow myself to scream into a pillow. I allow myself to feverishly journal when I'm upset, because after that, I'm able to release it. You know, that's where you want to be. You want to be able to allow yourself to process those emotions so that you're able to fully release it. And then you can go back into a positive state again. You can work to be in gratitude again. So the cost of spiritual bypassing is a delay in our healing. And it also creates a disconnection from ourselves. When we're always telling ourselves, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. we're lying to ourselves. So it's creating this disconnection in our mind that the next time something comes up, we're like, no, that doesn't bother me. Almost like a stoic teenager. You get what I'm saying? Like they don't ever want anybody to know that something's bothering them, and things are allowed to bother you. It's okay. But they tend to almost be like prideful. Like they don't want anybody to know that they're upset. That didn't upset me. I'm not upset by that. You get what I'm saying? And it's creating this disconnection. It's creating an inauthentic expression of yourself, and it's also, you're not being honest with yourself. You're not being honest with others in that moment, saying that you're not upset when you are, and you're not being honest with yourself. And it also is a little bit invalidating to someone else's real emotional experiences. If your house is burning down and you're like, no, I'm fine, everything's fine, and then the neighbor next to you's house is also burning down and they're in shambles crying, you're like, what's wrong with you? Why are you so upset? It's invalidating to others who are experiencing that thing, because guess what? We're human and we have complex emotions. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be enraged. It's all okay. All emotions are spiritual. All of them. All of them are a signpost. All of them are teaching us something. All of them are allowing us to release emotions that are within the body. We wouldn't have these emotions if they didn't serve a purpose. To go back to last week's episode, by the way, I do want to apologize again. I watched that episode back and it's a little hard to watch. You can tell I'm upset. I'm still upset. I have processed a lot this week. I have filled up almost an entire journal of stuff processing that friendship. But I do feel so much better because I allowed myself to feel it. I allowed myself to cry. I allowed myself to be sad for a few days. And didn't place judgment on that. And I also didn't put a timetable on it. Like, nope, Megan, you got to get over this within 5 days. I'm not allowing you more than a week to be sad about this. I'm still sad about this. It's a little bit better now. And this is a beautiful example of how I do not practice spiritual bypassing. In the past, I have practiced spiritual bypassing. When I first experienced my awakening journey, which was back in like 2012, how I experienced a spiritual awakening, and again, I know everybody can experience it in different ways, but with me, it was after reading the book, The Power of Now, and realizing that I am not my thoughts. That's just a tool, that my thoughts aren't actually factual. All of those things. So that's how my awakening journey began. And with Eckhart Tolle, don't get me wrong, I love him, I adore him, but some of the things that he was saying in there, and I don't think that they're necessarily wrong, but they can be misinterpreted. Like when he's saying, try and be in the present moment at all times. That's great, but for regular everyday life, I think it's kind of impossible. We have to-do lists, we have tasks, we have work, we have to problem solve, all of those things. I try and weave in moments of mindfulness throughout my day. That's how I weave the present moment in. But my point being, sometimes people read that like you need to be in the present moment at all times, and they assume that having any thoughts, and especially having any negative thoughts, is a bad thing. Negative thoughts aren't necessarily a bad thing. And what I mean by negative thoughts in this context is like emotional thoughts. You're upset about something and you're processing that. That's all I meant by negative thoughts. And those aren't negative, so that wasn't the right word to use. Those aren't negative thoughts. A negative thought would be more like, I'm a horrible person, I'm fat, I'm ugly. Those are really negative thoughts. And those are also thoughts that we can begin to shift and change. Once we become aware that we're thinking a thought like that, we can begin to change it. I know I'm going on tangents, but they're important. But again, with teachers like Eckhart Tolle, or like, what's another example? Deepak Chopra, Gandhi. I can think of so many, but of course they're not coming to mind right now. But some of those teachers, they'll say things like you need to be in the present moment as often as you can. I agree with that. I do. In our everyday life, I don't think we can be as present in the present moment as we might like to be. If I didn't have a job and I could sit around eating grapes all day, I'd be in the present moment all the time. But we don't live lives like that. And that's okay. It's practicing many moments of mindfulness, which maybe I'll do another episode on that. It's also allowing the hard moments, or the hard or tough emotional thoughts. That would have been a better name for it instead of negative thoughts. But it's allowing those thoughts to be there without judgment. It's allowing yourself to grieve what's going on without judgment, not placing a timetable on your grief. You know? So what I like to do when I'm experiencing a tough emotion is multiple things. First, I like to ask myself, what is it that I'm truly feeling? You know, and getting to the bottom of it. Am I feeling abandoned? Am I feeling overwhelmed? sad, fearful? What is it? And the feelings and emotions wheel is super helpful for this because it helps you narrow them down. Because sometimes all we can tell ourselves is, I'm feeling a little bit sad. Okay, the feelings and emotions wheel helps us really narrow down where is that sadness coming from. So look that up on Google. You can find the feelings and emotions wheel if you type that into Google. And so then once I realize that the emotion that I'm feeling, then I ask myself, where in my body am I feeling this? And we've talked about this before. A lot of times the body is holding on to that emotion in some way or another, especially if it's like fear. You'll notice your stomach getting tight. If it's maybe rejection from somebody you love, oftentimes our chest will get tight. You'll feel where it's residing in the body. And once you figure that out, and it could be multiple places at the same time, and once you figure that out, what I like to do is I like to try and release that energy from that area. So what I do is I picture almost like my breath being this magical energy that as it flows in, it flows to those spaces. Let's say it flows to the heart space. And then as I exhale, it releases that tension, releases that stuck energy, almost like a mist or a smoke leaving the body. And it helps me to relax that area. So that is helping me to release that energy from the body. Again, read the book, The Body Keeps a Score. Beautiful book talking about exactly what I'm talking about right now, that tough energies and trauma can literally get stored within the body. And then I just allow myself to feel it. I allow myself to cry, or especially doing that releasing breath. Oftentimes that can bring up tears when we're releasing something like that that's stuck in the body. Or another great example is doing yoga. Sometimes I'll do a lot of like hip stretches or hip openers or chest openers because we tend to hold a lot of tension in the chest and in the hips. Those can also be very releasing for anything energetic that our body is holding on to. I've done a hip opener before and then started bawling. Couldn't tell you why. I was releasing something. Who knows why? And I don't need to know the answer as to why, but I just allow myself to experience those emotions without judgment. And so then after I allow myself time to cry, and again, it could be in that moment or multiple times. It's okay if this keeps coming up. It's okay. Sometimes we need that in order to process things. And then oftentimes after that, I'll journal. And that's me. I really love journaling. I cannot express to you how wonderful journaling is. And again, it doesn't have to be pen and paper, because I know sometimes when people think about journaling, that stops them. They don't want to sit there and have to write with pen and paper. I get that. There are so many other ways to do it nowadays. You can write yourself an email. You can write what you're journaling in a Word document. You can open a voice memo and just literally speak everything that you're thinking. There are so many different ways to get those thoughts out of your head. Because here's another thing that I see journaling as a benefit from. Sometimes when I'm ruminating, I'm repeating, like a good example is what happened last week with my friend. I kept ruminating over different things that have happened between us. Like, is it this? Is it that? Because I didn't get closure. I didn't get a full answer as to what happened. So of course I'm ruminating and I'm trying to find the answer. And so I've found that when I journal, it's almost like giving myself permission that I'm going to release this from my head. It's in my journal. It's in here. I don't have to worry about continuing to ruminate on it because it's already memorialized there. I don't have to keep ruminating on this. I don't have to keep spinning around and round with this. Once it's on paper or in a notebook or in an email, whatever, it is like an energetic release for me that I can give myself permission to stop ruminating. And even sometimes I'll tell myself, Megan, it's okay. We don't have to keep thinking about this. It's okay. We don't have to keep thinking about this. If it's starting to become like a rumination loop, because that can not be helpful, right? The brain is seeking answers. When it can't find answers, it will just keep going and going and going and going. And that's a normal human thing. Do not judge yourself for that. But sometimes if we're ruminating over the same problem and we're not finding an answer, it can be so helpful to just put that problem on a journal and say, I'll look at it later. I'm going to table it for now and I will look at that later. So that's super helpful. Let me be very clear though. That is not bypassing that emotion. I'm just explaining simply if you're ruminating on one certain thing, it's okay to write that down and say, I'm going to look at that later instead of continuing to ruminate on it. So our healing is sacred, but it's not always serene. It's not always pretty. My healing a lot of times looks like snotty tissues and me laying on the floor in fetal position. One of my favorite, this is going to sound so weird. So I have this yoga bolster. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's like, one of those things that it's not this big. It's more like this big. And you place it a lot of times underneath your knees, like if you're laying down for Shavasana, if you go to a yoga class. So I have one of those bolsters, and what I do is I put it on my floor and I lay on it. So like I'm laying on it just like this and I'm hugging it like you would hug a person. And then I bring tissues with me and I will just lay on that bolster and I'll cry. And I think that there's something about, I don't know the science behind this, but I swear there must be something about laying in fetal position, and it's so healing for me, and it allows me to release a lot of the stuff that's going on. I just want to invite you to allow space for all of your emotions without judgment. It doesn't have to always be the shiny ones. And maybe an affirmation that could help you is something like, all of my emotions are welcome here. All of my emotions are welcome here. That sort of thing. And also, on the subject of spiritual bypassing, I want to offer a few journaling prompts. And again, you're welcome to take time to actually journal your response, or you're welcome to just think your response in your head right now as I'm asking the question. So the first one, where in my life have I felt pressure to be okay before I was ready? What emotions do I tend to avoid or label as too much? Have I ever used spiritual tools or language to avoid sitting in my discomfort? What would it feel like to allow myself to feel this without judgment? So hopefully some of those are helpful to you, and thank you so much for joining me today. And if you want to go deeper on your healing journey, there are many different ways to connect, and all of them are going to be linked below in the show description notes. My book, Don't You Dare, is available for purchase on Amazon. If you want to learn more about the ego voice or dive into shadow work, I think it's a beautiful tool for that. I also have my most loved meditation bundle available for purchase. Those are my highest rated meditations over the years. I have a new course called the Affirmation Reset course. It helps us to rewire negative or limiting beliefs. That is linked below. I also offer one-on-one coaching and hypnotherapy services. If you're interested in a session with me, please visit my website at meganshirey.com, meganshirey.com. I also teach a free live guided meditation on the Insight Timer app every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 Central, 8 Mountain, 7 Pacific. So hopefully you'll be able to join us there. And if you like these episodes, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and please leave us a review. It helps us to reach more listeners. May you be happy, may you be well, may you be joyous and at ease, sending you infinite love and light, and until next time.